Welcome back. In this video, we're going to cover the drop-down data tab. So we've got 3 different columns, and let's cover what each of them is. The first column is the To-Do tab status section, which consists of To-Do, In Progress, Complete, Pending, or Blocked. B is a job search workflow status. So you've got your job funnel, which you will capture To Apply, Applied, In Progress, No Go, To Consider, Refer a friend, because there's a lot of people out there without jobs right now, and if you can send something to somebody else, they can send something to you. Not applicable. And then we get into the interviews. So the recruiter interview, first interview, second interview, third interview. Hopefully you don't have this many interviews, but I threw them in there just in case. The take-home challenge interview, the final interview, and then of course, offer received, offer accepted, and offer declined. And then the last column is the priority dropdown, which is high, medium, and low, also with a number associated with it of 1, 2, 3, and 4, and not applicable. So we're going to connect all of those in just a second. To utilize the named range in the status dropdown, we're going to go to cell B2, so the top of the status column, and hit Shift-Command down to capture all of those cells. Right-click, 2-finger click, or Control-click, depending on what type of mouse and operating system you have. And then when you go to View More Cell Actions, we go to Data Validation. And in that data validation, it says Add Rule. We're going to select Dropdown, but we're actually going to select Dropdown from Range. And in here, if we start with DD and then To Do, like we had, that should reference that range. So let's see if that worked. Now we can go in and check out that range. Great, we've got To Do, In Progress, Complete, Pending, and Blocked. Now, you can add colors to this if it works for you, and we can take a look at that in a little bit. All right. Next up, we're going to jump over to the Job Funnel tab, and we're going to do the exact same thing. In this case, it's going to be cell C2, and Shift-Command down, or it's Shift-Control down, I believe, on Windows. And we're going to right-click. We're going to add data validation, although that's just going to throw the data validation rule. Here we go. So we're going to do drop down from range and do DD job funnel. And we're going to click there. And it pulls up all of these. This is definitely something that you will want to color code. But before we get to that, we're going to do the priority. So let's go back up to the top. Okay, we're in cell D2. Shift-Command down. So we select all of those cells. Again, more cell actions, data validation, add rule, from drop down from range, DD prio. All right, let's click out, and there we go. So you've also got advanced options if you ever need that in here. You can reject the input outright. You can just show a warning if it's sort of like a soft guideline. You can also change the display style from chip, arrow, and plain text. So arrow is just the arrow on the right here, and plain text will have the drop down, but you won't necessarily know there. I like the chip because I like the colors, and we then don't need to worry about conditional formatting, which we'll do in a future episode. Next is we're going to take a look at E and F. We've got date applied and last contact with the company, whether you want that to be last contact that you made or last contact that they made. And we're going to select both of those columns, and we're going to, in this case, go to data validation. We're going to approve the last one. We're going to go to data validation, add rule. But this time, we're not going to do a drop-down. We're going to do is a valid date. So when we do that, you can also show help text, which will throw that in there if there's an error. But in this case, I don't think it'll be a problem. Okay, when we hit done here, let's close out that menu. And when you click on that date, a calendar pops up, which means that you can just click the date. It's going to be in the format that you want. Let's say that it's February 13th. And depending on whether you're Canadian or American, or you want to do it in UTC, you can select the format of those cells. Let's use this as an example. Last contact was maybe 3 days later. And this is written in Canadian format, which I am Canadian, therefore that's what I like to use. But if you wanted to format all of those into the American style, highlight those 2 columns. You go up to Format, and then Format Number, because ultimately dates are just a series of numbers. And you can pick from one of the already available, so you can do month, day, year. You can do year, month, day. You can add in times if you want to get really specific, or you can do custom date and time format and have it look any which way you like. I'm just going to leave it as year, month, day because that's how I understand it best. It also makes it very easy to sort because then you have the year, which in this case will likely be 2023. Month you can do as 2, so if there is 1 through 9, it will show up before 10, 11, or 12. And then day, also 2 numbers to make sure that it all gets ordered in the right place. So you can just sort those by dates and times, ascending or descending. All right, so I'm just going to click out of that because it's already formatted the way that I want. And now we're going to do our first formula of the sheet, which I'm very excited about. In this formula, we're actually just going to deal with last contact date, and we're going to take a look at how many days it has been since the last contact. So the date since last contact formula will consist of a few different formulas. We're going to use the if statement. We're going to use the ISBLANK test. We're going to use the DATEDIF formula. And we're going to use the today formula to sort out how long it's been and what day it is. So if we take a look at the today formula, what this is going to return, you can see here the preview is today's date. And you can take a look at the breakdown of this. And this just returns the date as a date value. You can format it using a different date format if you like. We're just going to leave it the way that it is for now. And Google Sheets will figure out what the date is and how that all looks. So that's the today formula. Now, the DATEDIF is the other thing that we need to take a look at. And we're going to put that here so that we can get started in this formula. Now, in here, you've got the start date, you've got the end date, and then the unit or however you want to measure it. So with the start date, this is going to be the last contact date. Okay. Next, the end date is going to be today. So this is where that today formula is going to come in. Now you don't need to put the equal sign in if it has already been started. That's only required for the first formula of the cell. And we're going to close that out. And then the unit. So the unit is a string or an abbreviation based on how you want to see what that is. So we've got year, month, day, and then we could open this up to find out more about what those actually mean. MD is the number of days between start date and end date after subtracting whole months. YM is after subtracting whole years. And YD, the number of days between start and end date, assuming that the start and end date were no more than 1 year apart. So for us, we just need D. So we're going to put that into the formula and close that out. And we're getting an error. So you can see that the error is because I selected a date for the future for last contact. So let's change that and go back to the 9th. And you can see that it's been 2 days, in which case the date applied would probably be closer to the Monday. Now, that covers off on DATEDIF and today, but we don't need a whole bunch of errors, right? If we crank this down, you'll see all sorts of weird numbers coming in there, and it's just not going to be a fun time for anybody. So what we want to determine is if there is no date here, just return an empty cell. But if it isn't, then return this value. How do we do that? Well, we want to take this formula and we're going to wrap it in an if function. The logical expression that we want to understand here is if these cells are not blank, and that's where ISBLANK comes in. So ISBLANK, and that's the logical expression, which is going to return true or false. Next is we're going to select the cell for that. So if F2 is blank, then what we're going to return, value if it is blank, is just going to be an empty string. And if it is false, we're going to return the DATEDIF and what that returns. All right, so if we close that out, we should get 2 there. But if we stretch this all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that there's no values in anything where there is no date there. But if we take this and bring this down 1, it'll count extra. So it'll count to the next day, and you get 1 there. Okay, if we remove that, it ends up returning to a blank string. And that's how we use the if is blank, the DATEDIF, and today in this function. And that takes care of the drop-down data, and it takes care of the job funnel and calculating those dates. We'll see you in the next video.
Like and subscribe if you learned something. And remember, anything worth doing well is worth doing badly first.